The rain hammered against Luke Bennett's windshield as he watched his entire future slip away, all for a woman standing in designer heels beside a Mercedes with a blown tire. In exactly 17 minutes, he would miss the most important job interview of his life. The woman's desperate eyes met his through the downpour, and Luke's calloused hands tightened on the steering wheel. He had no idea that the stranded stranger would turn out to be Amanda Brooks, CEO of the very company he was racing to reach. Sometimes the biggest opportunities come disguised as the worst timing. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story of unexpected kindness travels. Luke Bennett's pickup truck rattled like a dying animal as he pushed it past 60 on Route 12, the Indiana rain turning the asphalt into a river of reflected headlights. His dashboard clock glowed 8:43 a.m., 17 minutes until the interview that could change everything. 17 minutes to reach Brooks Engineering's headquarters. 17 minutes to escape the poverty that had been suffocating him and his daughter Grace for the past 3 years. "Come on, baby," he whispered to the truck, his voice barely audible over the symphony of rain and struggling engine. "Just hold together for 17 more minutes." The suit jacket hanging behind him, borrowed from his neighbor Miguel, swayed with each pothole. Luke had pressed it 3 times that morning, trying to hide the fact that it was a size too large, trying to look like someone who belonged in the glass towers of Brooks Engineering instead of the trailer park on Maple Street. His hands, permanently stained with motor oil despite an hour of scrubbing, gripped the steering wheel as another wave of rain blurred his vision. Grace's voice echoed in his mind from that morning's breakfast. "You're going to get it, Dad. I know you will." She'd said it while eating generic cereal from a bowl with a crack down the middle, her 11-year-old eyes holding more faith than any child should need to carry. She hadn't asked about the electricity bill marked "Final Notice" tucked behind the toaster, hadn't mentioned that her shoes were held together with duct tape painted black to match the leather. She just believed in him, the way she always did. Luke had kissed her forehead, tasting the strawberry shampoo they'd watered down to make it last another week. "I'll do my best, Princess." "Your best is better than anyone else's," she'd said, and God, how he wanted that to be true. The fuel gauge hovered just above empty. He'd put in exactly enough gas to make it to Brooks Engineering and back, with maybe $1's worth to spare. Every cent mattered when you were living on the knife's edge between surviving and drowning. The factory job at Mitchell's Auto Parts kept them fed, barely, but the medical bills from Susan's cancer had created a hole that seemed to grow deeper every month, even 2 years after they'd lost her. Thunder cracked overhead, and Luke instinctively checked the rearview mirror, catching sight of his own reflection. 34 years old, but the bags under his eyes and the premature gray at his temples made him look 40. He'd shaved twice that morning, trying to eliminate every shadow of stubble, had even borrowed Miguel's cologne to mask the permanent scent of motor oil that seemed to live in his skin. "Senior mechanical engineer," he muttered, practicing the title listed in the job posting. $78,000 a year. The number was astronomical, more than double what he made now. It would mean Grace could join the school orchestra instead of just listening outside the door. It would mean fresh fruit instead of canned, new clothes instead of thrift store finds, maybe even college savings, that impossible dream he'd had to abandon when Susan got sick. The windshield wipers struggled against the torrential rain, creating brief windows of clarity before the world blurred again. Luke leaned forward, squinting through the storm, when he saw her. The Mercedes sat crooked on the shoulder, hazard lights painting the rain in rhythmic orange pulses. A woman stood beside it, her navy blue dress already soaked through, her blonde hair plastered against her face as she held a cell phone to her ear with one hand and pressed the other against the car as if trying to hold herself upright. Even from 50 yards away, Luke could see the defeat in her posture, the way her shoulders shook. From cold or tears, he couldn't tell. His foot moved instinctively toward the brake pedal. "No," he told himself, pressing back on the accelerator. "Not today. Can't be today." But as he drew closer, he could see more details. Her shoes, expensive heels that probably cost more than his monthly rent, were sinking into the muddy shoulder. She was alone. Completely alone on a stretch of highway known for its isolation, where cell service was spotty on good days and non-existent in storms like this. The pickup truck continued forward, past the Mercedes, and Luke caught a glimpse of her face in his side mirror. She'd seen him, had raised one hand in a desperate wave before letting it fall when he didn't stop. The resignation in that gesture hit him like a physical blow. "Damn it," Luke muttered, his father's voice suddenly filling the cab like a ghost. "You help folks when they need it, son. That's what separates good men from everyone else." His father had lived by those words, had died by them too, having a heart attack while helping a neighbor move furniture, always giving more than his body could handle. But he died with dignity, with respect, with a funeral attended by hundreds whose lives he'd touched with simple acts of kindness. Luke checked the clock, 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes. He could make it. He could pretend he hadn't seen her, could race to his interview, could secure his and Grace's future. The rational part of his brain screamed at him to keep driving. This woman with her Mercedes and designer clothes would be fine. Someone else would stop. Someone who could afford to be late. But then he thought about Grace again, about what he was teaching her every day through his actions more than his words, about what kind of man he wanted her to see when she looked at him, about what Susan would have done. Susan, who used to pull over to help turtles cross the road, who gave their last $5 to homeless veterans, who believed that kindness was the only currency that really mattered. "God damn it all to hell," Luke said, already knowing what he was going to do, already signaling to turn around at the next break in the median. The U-turn took him back 2 minutes in the wrong direction. By the time he pulled up behind the Mercedes, his dashboard clock read 8:48 a.m., 12 minutes to the interview. It was 5 minutes back to the last exit, then 25 minutes to Brooks Engineering if he hit every light perfect, if traffic cooperated, if miracles existed for people like him. He wasn't going to make it. Luke killed the engine and sat for one moment, watching the woman through his rain-streaked windshield. She'd lowered her phone, was staring at his truck like she couldn't quite believe it was real. He pulled Susan's old raincoat from behind the seat. He'd kept it all these years, unable to part with something that still smelled faintly of her perfume, and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit him like 1,000 tiny fists, immediately soaking through his borrowed suit jacket. His dress shoes, polished to a mirror shine an hour ago, squelched in the mud as he approached the woman. "Ma'am," he called out over the rain, "you okay?" She turned to face him fully, and Luke was struck by her eyes, green like sea glass, red-rimmed from crying, but holding an intensity that seemed at odds with her vulnerable position. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of refined features that spoke of privilege but also something else, a hardness around the edges, like someone who'd fought for everything despite that privilege. "My tire," she said, having to raise her voice over the storm. "It just exploded. I was—" She stopped, seeming to collect herself. "I have a meeting, an important meeting, and I can't get anyone on the phone, and—" "AAA?" Luke asked, already knowing the answer. "2-hour wait," they said. 2 hours. Her voice cracked slightly. "I can't wait 2 hours." Luke nodded, understanding completely. He glanced at the tire. The front passenger side was completely shredded, rubber peeled back like a grotesque flower. "You hit something." "I don't know. Maybe?" There was debris on the road from the construction zone. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. "I don't suppose you know how to change a tire?" The question was so absurd. Him, someone who'd been rebuilding engines since he was 12, not knowing how to change a tire, that he almost laughed. Instead, he found himself pulling off Susan's raincoat and holding it out to her. "Put this on," he said. "You're freezing." She hesitated, looking from the coat to his face. "But you'll get soaked." "Already am," Luke said, which was true. His suit was already ruined, the borrowed jacket heavy with rain. One more thing to apologize to Miguel for. "And yeah, I can change your tire. You got a spare?" "In the trunk, I think." She pulled on the raincoat, and it engulfed her smaller frame. "I'm sorry, I don't even know your name." "Luke," he said, already moving toward the trunk. "Luke Bennett." "Emily," she replied, and something flickered across her face when she said it. Hesitation, maybe, or calculation. "Emily. Madison." Luke popped the trunk and found the spare. One of those temporary donuts that would get her maybe 50 miles at reduced speed. He also found the jack and tire iron, pristine and clearly never used. Everything about this car screamed money. From the leather interior to the advanced dashboard he could see through the window. This woman, Emily, Probably had never had to change her own tire, had people for that. Lived in a world where problems were solved with phone calls and credit cards. "This is going to take a few minutes," he said, already positioning the jack. "You might want to wait in my truck. Get out of the rain." "I'll stay," she said, pulling the raincoat's hood up. "Least I can do is keep you company while you ruin your suit for a stranger." Luke glanced down at himself. The white dress shirt was now transparent with rain, the borrowed jacket hanging like a dead thing from his shoulders. "Job interview," he admitted, not sure why he was telling her. "Kind of important one." "Oh, God," Emily said, her hand flying to her mouth. "What time?" 9 o'clock. She pulled out her phone, checking the time despite the cracked screen. "It's 8:52. You could still make it if—" "It's 25 minutes from here in good weather," Luke said, already loosening the lug nuts. "And that's if I abandon you here, which I'm not doing." "But your interview will have to wait," Luke said firmly, though the words felt like swallowing glass. "Or they'll have to find someone else. Either way, I'm not leaving you stranded on the side of Route 12 in a storm." Emily was quiet for a moment, watching him work. The rain had lessened slightly, becoming a steady shower instead of a deluge, but it was still enough to make the simple task of changing a tire feel like a Herculean effort. Luke's fingers, already numb from the cold, struggled with the slippery lug nuts. "What kind of job?" Emily asked finally. "Senior mechanical engineer," Luke said, grunting as he finally got one lug nut loose. "Brooks Engineering." Emily went very still. "Brooks Engineering? Yeah, you know it?" "I've heard of it." Her voice was strange, carefully neutral. "Good company, from what I understand." "The best," Luke agreed, moving to the next lug nut. "They do incredible work in renewable energy, sustainable manufacturing. It's not just about the money, though God knows I need that too. It's about being part of something that matters, you know? And you're missing the interview to help me." It wasn't a question, and Luke didn't treat it as one. He focused on his work, trying not to think about the clock ticking away, about Grace's face when he came home still wearing his factory uniform, about another month of choosing between electricity and groceries. "Why?" Emily asked suddenly. "Why would you do this? You don't know me. I'm nobody to you." Luke paused, his hands on the tire iron, rain running down his face in rivulets. "My wife," he said slowly, "she used to say that we're all just walking each other home, that every person we meet is fighting some battle we know nothing about, carrying some weight we can't see. She said the least we can do is not add to that weight, and if we can, maybe help carry it for a while." "Used to say?" "Cancer," Luke said simply. 2 years ago." "I'm sorry." "Me too." He went back to work, the familiar motions of changing a tire almost meditative despite the circumstances. But she was right about helping people. My dad said the same thing, different words. You help folks when they need it, simple as that. Even when it costs you everything? Luke thought about the interview, about the senior engineer position, about the $78,000 a year that was currently disappearing with each turn of the tire iron. "Everything's relative, Yiso," he said. "Yeah, this job would have changed my life. Would have meant my daughter could have things I can't give her now. But what would it really cost me if I drove past you? What would it cost her knowing her dad saw someone who needed help and chose his own interests instead?" Emily was quiet for a long moment, watching him work. The spare tire was on now, and Luke was tightening the lug nuts in a star pattern, making sure the pressure was evenly distributed. Professional, even in the rain, even with his future washing away with the storm water rushing past on the highway. "Your daughter," Emily said. "Tell me about her." Luke's face transformed, a smile breaking through despite everything. "Grace. She's 11, smartest kid you've ever met. Gets it from her mother, thank God. Wants to be a doctor or an astronaut, or maybe both. She changes her mind every week, but it's always something big, something that helps people." He gave the last lug nut a final turn. "She's the reason I do everything, the reason I was trying for this job, the reason I stopped to help you. I want her to grow up knowing her dad did the right thing, even when it was hard." "She sounds amazing." "She is." Luke stood, his knees cracking from kneeling on the wet asphalt. "Okay, you're good to go. This spare will get you about 50 miles, but keep it under 55 miles per hour. Get to a tire shop as soon as you can. There's a good one at the exit near Brookfield. Honest prices. Emily stared at him, rain still falling between them. Luke, I don't know how to thank you. Don't need thanks, Luke said, collecting the flat tire and carrying it to her trunk. Just pay it forward sometime. Help someone else when they need it. He was turning to go back to his truck when Emily caught his arm. Her hand was small, but her grip was surprisingly strong. The interview, she said. Call them. Explain what happened. Any company worth working for would understand. Luke laughed, but it was bitter. You don't know corporate America very well. They've got 300 applications for this position. They don't need to understand anything. They'll just move on to the next person who showed up on time. You might be surprised, Emily said quietly. Brooks Engineering. From what I've heard, they value character. Character doesn't pay the electric bill, Luke said, then immediately felt bad for the harshness in his voice. Sorry, it's not your fault. This was my choice. Yes, Emily said with an odd intensity. It was, and that matters more than you might think. Luke didn't know what to say to that, so he simply nodded and headed back to his truck. He was reaching for the door handle when Emily called out, Luke, wait! He turned to see her jogging toward him through the rain, Susan's raincoat flapping around her. She was holding something, a business card, he realized, as she pressed it into his hand. My number, she said. Call me later, please. I might know some people. Other opportunities. Luke looked at the card, but the rain had already begun to blur the ink. He could make out Emily Madison and a phone number, nothing else. You don't owe me anything. No, she agreed. But that's not what this is about. Just call me. Promise? There was something in her eyes, an urgency he didn't understand, but Luke nodded. Okay, I'll call. Emily smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her, and it transformed her face completely. Good. Thank you, Luke Bennett, for everything. She ran back to her Mercedes, and Luke climbed into his truck. The engine struggled to life, coughing like an old man with pneumonia. His dashboard clock read 9:07. The interview had started 7 minutes ago. Even if he drove there now, he'd be almost 40 minutes late. It was over. Luke sat there for a moment, watching Emily's Mercedes pull carefully back onto the highway, the spare tire making it list slightly to one side. His suit was ruined. His shoes were probably ruined. Miguel's jacket was definitely ruined. And the job that would have solved almost every problem in his life was gone. But as he put the truck in gear and headed back toward Maple Street, toward the trailer park, toward Grace and their small life, Luke found he didn't regret it. His father would have been proud. Susan would have been proud. And tonight, when he tucked Grace into bed, he could tell her he'd done the right thing. That had to count for something, even if he couldn't deposit it in the bank. The rain began to lighten as Luke took the exit toward home, not knowing that Emily Madison was actually Amanda Brooks, not knowing that she was already on the phone with her head of HR, not knowing that his act of kindness had just set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. He just drove home in his rattling truck, wet and tired and unemployed, but somehow, inexplicably, at peace with the choice he'd made. The clock on the dashboard clicked over to 9:15, and somewhere in a glass tower across the city, a conference room full of executives was learning exactly why Luke Bennett hadn't shown up for his interview. But Luke didn't know that. He just drove home to his daughter, to their small life, to the dignity of having done the right thing when it mattered most. The storm was passing, and through the breaking clouds, a single ray of sunlight illuminated the road ahead. Luke took it as a sign, not that everything would be okay, but that he'd chosen correctly. Sometimes the best decisions were the ones that cost you the most. Sometimes the right path was the one that led away from what you wanted and toward who you really were. As he pulled into the trailer park, Luke saw Miguel waiting on his porch, probably to ask about the interview. Luke would have to tell him about the jacket, would have to disappoint another person who'd believed in him. But Miguel would understand. That was the thing about people who'd struggled. They understood that sometimes you had to choose between success and soul, and that choosing soul, while it might leave you poor, never left you empty. Luke parked the truck and sat for one more moment, fingering the water-stained business card in his pocket. Emily Madison. Something about her had seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. Maybe it was just the shared recognition of someone else fighting their own battles, carrying their own weight. Or maybe it was something else, something he wouldn't understand until later. But for now, Luke Bennett climbed out of his truck, ready to face his daughter, ready to explain why Daddy didn't get the job, but why that was okay, ready to continue their small life with its large love. He'd lost an interview, but he'd kept his integrity. In the ledger of things that mattered, Luke figured he'd come out ahead. The trailer door opened before he reached it, and Grace flew out, her face bright with expectation. "Dad, how did it—" She stopped, taking in his soaked appearance, his ruined suit, the defeat he thought he was wearing like a sign. But instead of disappointment, her face softened with understanding. "You helped someone," she said. It wasn't a question. "How did you—" "Because you're you," Grace said simply, wrapping her arms around his wet waist, not caring that he was soaking her school clothes. "That's what you do." Luke held his daughter tight, feeling the warmth of her against the cold that had settled into his bones. "I'm sorry, Princess. I know you were counting on this." Grace pulled back, looking up at him with those eyes that were so much like her mother's. "Mom used to say that good things happen to good people. Maybe not right away, but eventually. The universe keeps score." Your mother was an optimist. "And she was usually right," Grace countered. "Come on, you need to get dry. I made soup." "You made soup?" "Well, I opened a can and heated it up, but that counts." She tugged him toward the door. "And Dad, I'm proud of you for helping whoever you helped. That job wasn't worth changing who you are." Luke followed his daughter into their tiny home, marveling at the wisdom of an 11-year-old who understood what so many adults never learned. The interview was over, the opportunity gone, but standing in his small kitchen with his daughter ladling out tomato soup with crackers on the side, Luke felt richer than any salary could have made him. He pulled out the business card one more time, studying the smeared ink. Tomorrow, he'd call Emily Madison. Not because he expected anything, but because he'd promised. And Luke Bennett was a man who kept his promises, even when they cost him everything. Outside, the storm had completely passed, and afternoon sunlight streamed through the trailer's small windows, painting everything in gold. It was beautiful in its way. Not the beauty of glass towers and corporate offices, but the beauty of a life lived according to principles that mattered. The beauty of choosing others over yourself. The beauty of teaching your daughter through actions that some things were worth more than money. Luke changed out of his wet clothes and joined Grace at their small table, eating soup and listening to her talk about her school day, about her dreams, about everything except the failed interview. And in that moment, despite everything he'd lost, Luke Bennett felt like the richest man in Indiana. He had no way of knowing that across the city, Amanda Brooks was sitting in her executive office, staring at a computer screen displaying Luke Bennett's employment history, his credit report, his daughter's honor roll certificates pulled from social media, everything her considerable resources could find about the man who'd chosen kindness over opportunity. She was already planning her next move, already orchestrating the pieces that would bring Luke Bennett back into her orbit. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight was about tomato soup and crackers, about a father and daughter in a trailer park, about the quiet dignity of good people doing good things in a world that rarely rewarded them for it. Tonight was about the choice on Route 12, and the man who'd made it without hesitation, without regret, without knowing it would change everything. The evening settled around the trailer park like a comfortable blanket, and Luke Bennett closed his eyes for a moment, listening to Grace humming while she did her homework, feeling Susan's presence in the ordinary magic of their continuous life. He'd lost a job, but kept his soul. In the economy of the heart, that was a profitable trade. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new bills, new worries. But tonight, Luke Bennett was exactly where he needed to be, exactly who he needed to be. The man who stopped in the rain, the man who helped, the man whose daughter could be proud of him even when he came home defeated. That had to be worth something. And it was, more than he could possibly imagine. The morning after the failed interview arrived like an unwelcome guest, gray and drizzling, matching Luke's mood as he stood at the kitchen counter making Grace's lunch. His hands moved automatically. Peanut butter on wheat bread, an apple that was slightly bruised but still good, a juice box he'd bought in bulk when they were on sale. The normal routine felt heavier today, weighted with the knowledge that nothing was going to change, that this was still their life, would continue to be their life. "Dad?" Grace appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school in jeans that were getting too short and a sweater that had belonged to one of Miguel's daughters. "You okay?" "Fine, princess. Just tired." Luke managed a smile, sealing her sandwich in a plastic bag that had been washed and reused so many times the zip barely held. "Did you call that lady yet? The one from yesterday?" Luke glanced at the business card on the counter, the ink now completely smeared beyond recognition, except for the phone number he had managed to memorize before it disappeared entirely. "It's too early. Business people don't start until 9. "It's 8:45, Grace pointed out, shouldering her backpack. "And you're stalling." "When did you get so smart?" "Tuesday," she said with a grin that was pure Susan. "Call her, Dad. What's the worst that could happen?" Luke could think of several worse things. Emily Madison could be some kind of salesperson who'd given him her card out of guilt, or worse, someone who'd offer him charity he couldn't accept. But he kissed Grace's forehead and promised, "I'll call." After walking Grace to the bus stop, watching until the yellow behemoth swallowed her up and rumbled away, Luke returned to the trailer and stared at his phone for a full 5 minutes. The factory didn't need him until the afternoon shift, which meant he had time to torture himself with possibilities that probably didn't exist. Finally, he dialed the number. "Amanda Brooks' office. How may I direct your call?" Luke nearly dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, I must have the wrong number. I was trying to reach Emily Madison." There was a pause on the other end. "May I ask who's calling?" "Luke Bennett. She gave me her card yesterday." "Oh, Mr. Bennett, yes. Ms. Brooks has been expecting your call. Please hold." Before Luke could process what was happening, classical music filled his ear. Vivaldi, he thought, though his knowledge of classical music came entirely from Susan's old CDs. His mind raced. Amanda Brooks, the CEO of Brooks Engineering. But the woman had said her name was Emily Madison. Why would... "Luke?" The voice was familiar, the same one from yesterday, but somehow different, more authoritative, less vulnerable. "Thank you for calling." "I'm confused," Luke said honestly. "The receptionist said Amanda Brooks, but you told me your name was Emily Madison." A sigh traveled through the phone. "I owe you an explanation, and an apology. Could you come to my office today, Brooks Engineering headquarters, the same place you were supposed to interview yesterday?" "Why?" The word came out harsher than he intended. "Is this some kind of game? Rich CEO pretends to be stranded to test the help?" "It wasn't a game, Amanda, because that's who she really was," said quietly. "I was genuinely stranded. The tire genuinely blew out. I genuinely needed help. The only lie was my name, and that's complicated. Please, Luke, let me explain in person. I promise it will be worth your time. I have work at 2. Real work, at a real job where real people depend on me." "I understand. Could you come now? I'll make sure you're out by 1:30. Luke wanted to hang up, wanted to tell Amanda Brooks or Emily Madison or whoever she was to go to hell. But he thought about Grace, about the electric bill, about the fact that his truck needed new brake pads he couldn't afford. Pride was a luxury for people with savings accounts. "Fine," he said, "but I'm coming in my work clothes. The suit you saw yesterday was borrowed and it's ruined now." "Come as you are," Amanda said. "That's actually perfect." An hour later, Luke stood in the marble lobby of Brooks Engineering, feeling like a fraud in his cleanest jeans and the least stained work shirt he owned. The security guard who checked his ID looked skeptical, but a quick phone call cleared his access, and soon Luke was rising in an elevator that moved so smoothly he barely felt it. The executive floor was everything he'd imagined and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city, modern art that probably cost more than his trailer, the kind of hushed atmosphere that spoke of serious money and serious power. The receptionist, a polished woman in her 50s, smiled at him warmly despite his appearance. "Mr. Bennett, Ms. Brooks is waiting for you, right through there." The office door was already open, and Luke stepped through to find Amanda Brooks standing by the windows, her back to him. She wore a cream-colored suit that looked like it had been sewn directly onto her body, her blonde hair pulled back in a style that was professional but softer than he would have expected. When she turned, he saw the same green eyes from yesterday, but everything else was different. The vulnerability was gone. replaced by the kind of confidence that came from running a multi-million-dollar company. Luke, thank you for coming. Should I call you Emily or Amanda? Amanda? Emily was my mother's name. I use it sometimes when I don't want to be the CEO, when I just want to be a person. She gestured to a sitting area with leather chairs that looked more expensive than his truck. Please, sit. Luke remained standing. Why am I here? Because you missed your interview yesterday to help me. Because that interview was important to you and you chose to help a stranger instead. Anyone would have... No, Amanda interrupted. They wouldn't have. Do you know how many cars passed me before you stopped? 17. I counted. 17 people who saw a woman stranded in the rain and kept driving. You were the only one who stopped. So what, this is guilt? You feel bad that I missed the interview, so you're going to what? Give me a consolation prize? Amanda's eyes flashed. I don't do consolation prizes, Mr. Bennett, and I don't make business decisions based on guilt. Sit down, please. This time Luke sat, though he perched on the edge of the chair as if ready to bolt. Amanda took the chair across from him, crossing her legs and studying him with an intensity that made him want to check if his shirt was buttoned correctly. Tell me about your daughter, she said unexpectedly. What? Your daughter, Grace. Tell me about her. How do you know her name? I had HR pull your file after I got back yesterday. You've applied to Brooks Engineering 3 times in the last 2 years. Each time you've made it to the final round of candidates, and each time something has prevented you from getting the position. Once you missed the interview because Grace was in the hospital with pneumonia. Another time you declined the offer because it would have required relocating and you couldn't move Grace away from her support system so soon after losing her mother. Amanda leaned forward slightly. A pattern emerges. You consistently choose people over profit, relationships over advancement. That's rare, Mr. Bennett, especially in someone with your qualifications. My qualifications are a community college degree and 15 years of fixing other people's mistakes. Your qualifications, Amanda corrected, include 16 patents filed while you were at Mitchell's Auto Parts, all assigned to the company for a $50 bonus each because you needed the money more than the credit. Your qualifications include redesigning their entire assembly line process on your own time, saving them approximately $300,000 a year. Your qualifications include being the only person in the last 5 years to score perfect on our technical assessment. Luke stared at her. How do you know about the patents? Because unlike Mitchell's, I actually pay attention to talent. You're wasting yourself there, Luke. You're a brilliant engineer working as a mechanic because you can't afford to take the risk of changing jobs, because you have a daughter to support and bills to pay and no safety net to catch you if you fall. Must be nice to see all that from your tower, Luke said, unable to keep the bitterness out of his voice, to analyze the little people and their little problems. Amanda's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. My father built this company from nothing, started in a garage smaller than your trailer, actually. He worked 18-hour days, missed most of my childhood, had his first heart attack at 45. Do you know what he said to me before he died? He said, Amanda, I built you an empire, but I forgot to teach you how to be human. He was wrong about that. He taught me plenty about being human. He taught me that when you see someone who needs help, you help them. He taught me that character matters more than credentials. He also taught me that the best business decisions often look like the worst ones at first. She stood, moving back to the windows, and Luke could see tension in the line of her shoulders. Yesterday, when you stopped to help me, you didn't know who I was. You had every reason to keep driving, a crucial interview, your daughter's future, your own desperate situation. But you stopped anyway. Do you understand how rare that is? It's called basic decency. Exactly. Amanda turned back to him. And basic decency is the one thing I can't teach, can't train, can't buy. Skills can be learned, experience can be gained. But character? Character is what you are when no one's watching, when it costs you everything, when there's no reward waiting at the end. Luke shifted uncomfortably. So what are you saying? I'm saying that the position you interviewed for, would have interviewed for, has been filled. We hired someone yesterday afternoon. The words hit Luke like a physical blow. He'd known it was probably too late, but hearing it confirmed still hurt. Then why am I here? Because I have a different proposition for you. Amanda returned to her chair, and now her whole demeanor changed, becoming more animated, more engaged. I'm creating a new position, Director of Manufacturing Innovation. It's not an engineering role exactly. It's bigger than that. I need someone who understands both the technical side and the human side of manufacturing. Someone who can look at our processes and see not just how to make them more efficient, but how to make them more humane. Someone who understands what it's like to be on the factory floor, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to maintain dignity while feeding a family. Luke's mouth had gone dry. I don't understand. I've been trying to bridge the gap between our executive level and our manufacturing teams for years. Every consultant I hire comes in with their MBA and their theories, and they have no idea why their brilliant ideas fail when implemented. It's because they don't understand the reality of the people actually doing the work. But you do? You've lived it. You want to hire me because I'm poor? I want to hire you because you're brilliant and you're poor, Amanda corrected. Because you have the technical skills to innovate and the life experience to understand impact. Because you chose to help a stranger in the rain, even though it cost you everything. What's the catch? Amanda smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her today. The catch is that you'd be reporting directly to me. I'm not easy to work for. I'm demanding, I'm perfectionist, and I have very high standards. The position would require some travel, though we'd work around Grace's schedule. And you'd need to start at management level, which means dealing with corporate politics you probably hate. The salary? $95,000 to start. Full benefits including dental and vision. Company car since yours is, she glanced at something on her desk, a 1998 Ford F-150 with over 300,000 miles. College fund contribution for Grace. And if you last a year and perform well, we renegotiate up. Luke couldn't breathe. $95,000. A car. College fund for Grace. It was everything, more than everything. It was impossible. This is because you feel guilty, he said weakly. This is because I'm a businesswoman, Amanda countered. I see an undervalued asset and I acquire it. The fact that you helped me yesterday just accelerated a decision I should have made 2 years ago when you first applied. Mitchell's has been stealing from you, paying you a fraction of what you're worth while profiting from your innovations. I'm offering you fair market value for your talents, plus a premium for your character. I need to think about it. Of course. But Luke? While you're thinking, consider this. Grace needs to see you valued properly. She needs to see that doing the right thing, being a good person, doesn't mean accepting less than you deserve. You've taught her about sacrifice and hard work. Maybe it's time to teach her about success too. The words hit home harder than Amanda could have known. Luke thought about Grace wearing hand-me-downs, about her watching other kids join activities they couldn't afford, about the way she never complained but sometimes looked wistful when her classmates talked about vacations or new phones or simple things like going to the movies. When would I start? He heard himself asking. Monday, if you can swing it. That gives you time to give notice at Mitchell's, though, frankly, they don't deserve it. You've given them enough. They've been good to me. They've exploited you, Amanda said flatly. They've paid you $35,000 a year while your innovations have made them millions. That's not good to you, Luke. That's theft with a smile. Luke's phone buzzed. A text from the factory. Where are you? Henderson's looking for you. I need to go, Luke said, standing. I have a shift. Amanda stood too, and for a moment they faced each other across the expensive carpet, two people from different worlds brought together by a blown tire in the rain. The offer stands, she said. Call me when you've decided. But Luke? Don't take too long. I'm patient, but I'm not that patient. As Luke turned to leave, Amanda called out one more time. For what it's worth, yesterday when you drove away after changing my tire, I sat in my car and cried. Not because of the tire, not because I was late, but because I realized I'd forgotten what it looked like when someone did something simply because it was right. You reminded me of my father, of why he started this company, of what we're supposed to be about. So thank you for that. Luke didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and left, riding the smooth elevator down to reality, to his truck that took 3 tries to start, to his shift at Mitchell's where he'd spend the next 8 hours covered in grease and sweat for barely enough money to survive. But something had shifted. A door had opened that he'd thought was permanently closed. As he drove to the factory, Luke thought about Amanda Brooks, about the way she'd said character couldn't be bought. He thought about his father, who died with nothing but respect. He thought about Susan, who'd believed that kindness always came back around. And he thought about Grace, who deserved so much more than he'd been able to give her. The factory loomed ahead, all concrete and corrugated metal, looking more like a prison than ever. Luke parked in his usual spot, noticing how his truck looked even more pathetic next to the newer vehicles of management, who made twice what he did while contributing half as much. Henderson was waiting at the time clock, his face red with annoyance. "Bennett, where the hell have you been? We've got a crisis on line 3. "Sorry, Mr. Henderson, family emergency." "There's always something with you, isn't it? Get suited up and get out there. Thompson's ready to shut the whole line down." Luke bit back his response, heading to his locker to change into his coveralls. The same coveralls he'd worn for 5 years, his name embroidered on the pocket in thread that was coming loose. As he tied his steel-toed boots, Roberts from line 2 leaned against the adjacent locker. "Heard you had an interview at Brooks yesterday. How'd it go?" "Didn't make it," Luke said shortly. "Figures. Guys like us don't get jobs at places like that. They want their college boys, their clean hands and soft voices. We're just the muscle, Bennett. Sooner you accept that, happier you'll be." Luke wanted to tell Roberts about the offer, about the $95,000, about the possibility that guys like them could indeed move up. But he kept quiet, heading out to line 3 where, sure enough, Thompson was standing next to a seized conveyor system, his clipboard in hand and his expression sour. "About time, Bennett. This whole mess is costing us thousands per hour." Luke examined the system, immediately seeing the problem. A bearing had overheated because someone had ignored the maintenance schedule he'd recommended 3 months ago. It would take hours to fix properly, but he could get it running temporarily in about 30 minutes. As he worked, lying on his back under the conveyor, oil dripping onto his face, Luke thought about what Amanda had said. Theft with a smile. "Bennett!" Thompson's voice cracked like a whip. "Stop daydreaming and fix the damn machine." "It would have been prevented if you'd approved the maintenance I requested," Luke said, sliding out from under the conveyor. "This bearing was on the replacement list 3 months ago. We don't pay you to make lists, Bennett. We pay you to fix things when they break. And then fix them again when they break again because you won't invest in proper maintenance." Thompson's face darkened. "You got something to say, Bennett?" 3 days ago, Luke would have backed down, would have apologized, would have remembered that he needed this job to keep Grace fed and housed. But something had changed. The offer from Amanda Brooks sat in his mind like a loaded gun, giving him a courage he hadn't felt in years. "Yeah, I do have something to say. This factory runs on equipment that's held together with prayers and duct tape. You ignore every recommendation I make because it costs money up front, then act surprised when everything falls apart. I've saved this company hundreds of thousands with my improvements. And what do I get? 35 grand a year and lectures about knowing my place." The floor had gone quiet. Other workers were watching, some with shock, others with something that looked like admiration. Thompson's face had gone from red to purple. "You're walking a thin line, Bennett." "No, I'm walking out," Luke heard himself say. "I quit." The words hung in the air like an explosion. Thompson actually took a step back. You can't quit. You've got a daughter to support. You need this job." "I need a job," Luke corrected. "I don't need this job. Fix your own machines, Thompson. Or better yet, hire someone else for 35 grand and see how that works out for you." Luke set down his tools, deliberately and carefully. He walked back to the locker room, peeling off the coveralls for the last time, aware that half the factory was watching him. Roberts was still there, his mouth hanging open. "Bennett, what the hell are you doing?" "Something I should have done years ago," Luke said, pulling on his street clothes. "You were wrong, Roberts. Guys like us can work at places like Brooks. We just have to stop believing we don't deserve it." As he walked out of Mitchell's Auto Parts for the last time, Luke felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. He had no backup plan if Amanda Brooks rescinded her offer. He'd just bet everything on a woman he'd helped in the rain, on a promise of $95,000 and a chance at dignity. But as he drove home, his truck rattling but his spirit soaring, Luke knew he'd made the right choice. Grace was already home when he arrived. doing homework at the kitchen table. She looked up, saw his expression, and her eyes widened. Dad, what happened? I quit the factory. You... What? Dad, why would you... Because Amanda Brooks offered me a job, Director of Manufacturing Innovation. $95,000 a year, full benefits, college fund for you. Grace's pencil fell from her hand. Amanda Brooks, the CEO? But I thought her name was Emily. It's a long story, but Grace, everything's about to change. Everything. Grace flew out of her chair, throwing her arms around him. I knew it. I knew something good would come from helping her. Mom was right, wasn't she? The universe does keep score. Luke held his daughter tight, smelling her strawberry shampoo, feeling the way she shook with excitement and relief. We're going to be okay, Princess. More than okay. Can I get new shoes, the ones without duct tape? Luke laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. You can get whatever shoes you want. That evening, as they celebrated with pizza, delivery, not frozen, Luke called Amanda Brooks. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting. I accept, he said without preamble. Good. I heard you made quite an exit from Mitchell's today. How did you... I have sources everywhere, Luke. It's part of being a CEO. I'm proud of you for standing up to them. It was long overdue. I might have burned that bridge pretty thoroughly. Some bridges need burning. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Come to the executive entrance. Your ID badge and parking pass will be waiting. Amanda, thank you for all of this. Don't thank me yet. I told you I'm demanding. You might hate me in a month. I doubt that. We'll see. Oh, and Luke, bring Grace to the office sometime next week. I'd like to meet her properly. Any daughter who inspired such loyalty must be extraordinary. After Luke hung up, he found Grace staring at him with shining eyes. We're really going to be okay, aren't we, Dad? Yeah, Princess. We really are. That night, Luke stood outside the trailer, looking up at the stars. Somewhere he felt Susan smiling. She'd always believed that kindness came back around, that good things happened to good people. It had taken longer than expected, had come in a form he never could have imagined, but she'd been right. The next morning, Saturday, Luke woke to someone knocking on the trailer door. He opened it to find a man in a suit holding a set of car keys. Mr. Bennett, I'm from Brooks Engineering. Ms. Brooks asked me to deliver your company vehicle. Luke followed the man outside to find a brand new Ford Explorer, navy blue with leather interior and all the bells and whistles he'd only seen in commercials. Grace came running out in her pajamas, circling the vehicle with awe. This is ours? Company car, Luke corrected, though he was as amazed as she was. But yeah, we get to use it. The man handed over the keys and a folder of paperwork. Insurance is covered by the company. Maintenance, too. Ms. Brooks said to tell you that reliable transportation is essential for your position. After the man left, Luke and Grace sat in the Explorer, running their hands over the leather seats, playing with the radio, adjusting the mirrors. It still smelled new, like possibility and fresh starts. Grace was practically bouncing in the passenger seat. Can we drive somewhere? Anywhere? Where do you want to go? The mall? We could look at clothes for your new job. And maybe shoes for me. Luke started the engine, which purred instead of coughing, and backed out smoothly. No rattling, no smoke, no prayers needed. As they drove through the trailer park, neighbors stopped to stare. Miguel actually dropped his coffee mug. At the mall, Luke bought Grace 3 pairs of shoes, sneakers for school, dress shoes for special occasions, and pink boots just because she loved them. He bought himself 2 suits, real ones that fit properly, and several dress shirts that didn't come from the thrift store. The total made him nervous until he remembered his new salary, remembered that this was his life now. Dad, Grace said as they ate lunch in the food court, her new shoes and bags around their feet, do you think Mom knows about all this? I think she does, Princess. I think she's probably pretty happy right now. I dreamed about her last night. She said to tell you she was proud of you for stopping in the rain. Luke's throat tightened. Yeah? Yeah, she also said Amanda Brooks needs a friend, that she's lonelier than she looks. Your mother always saw things other people missed. That evening, Luke started getting ready for Monday, reading through the packet Amanda's assistant had sent over about Brooks Engineering, about their commitment to sustainable manufacturing, about their vision for the future. It was everything he dreamed of being part of, and now it was really happening. Sunday afternoon, Grace helped him pick out his outfit for the first day. The navy suit, she decided, with the light blue shirt. You look important in that one. I don't feel important. You will, Grace said confidently. Amanda Brooks saw what everyone else missed. That makes her pretty smart. That night, Luke couldn't sleep. He stood at the window watching the trailer park settle into darkness, knowing this was probably their last few months here. Once he'd established himself at Brooks, once the paychecks started coming, they could move to a real house, in a neighborhood with sidewalks and good schools, where Grace could have friends over without being embarrassed. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When he opened it, he found a message from Amanda. Stop overthinking. You're going to be brilliant. See you in the morning. Luke smiled, wondering how she'd known he was awake, worrying. Maybe successful CEOs had a sixth sense about these things. Or maybe she was awake too, thinking about the gamble she'd taken on a mechanic who'd stopped to change her tire. The clock ticked past midnight, officially making it Monday. In 9 hours, Luke would walk into Brooks Engineering not as an interviewee, not as a hopeful, but as Director of Manufacturing Innovation. It sounded impossible, felt impossible, but the car keys on his counter and the suits in his closet said otherwise. Thank you, he whispered to the universe, to Susan, to whatever forces had put him on Route 12 at exactly the right moment. Then he went to bed, ready for his new life to begin. Monday morning arrived with unusual sunshine, the kind that made even the trailer park look almost optimistic. Luke stood before the bathroom mirror, adjusting his new tie for the third time, his hand surprisingly steady despite the hurricane of nerves in his stomach. Grace sat on the closed toilet seat, offering commentary on his appearance with the seriousness of a fashion consultant. A little to the left, she directed, pointing at the tie. There. Perfect. You look like you belong in a magazine, Dad. I feel like I'm wearing a costume, Luke admitted, smoothing down the jacket of his navy suit. It fit perfectly, unlike anything he'd ever worn before, but that perfection felt foreign against his skin. It's not a costume if it's who you're supposed to be, Grace said, wisdom beyond her 11 years shining through again. Mom used to say that sometimes we have to grow into our blessings. Luke turned to face his daughter fully. When did you become the parent here? Someone has to make sure you don't chicken out, she said with a grin. Now go. You don't want to be late on your first day. The drive to Brooks Engineering in the Explorer felt surreal. No engine noise, no worried glances at the temperature gauge, no prayers at red lights. Luke pulled into the executive parking area, his name already on a reserved spot near the entrance. His name, on a sign, at Brooks Engineering. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, remembering another morning just days ago when he'd been racing to an interview he'd never make. The executive entrance opened into a different lobby than the one he'd visited on Friday. This one was smaller, more intimate, with fresh flowers and a coffee bar where several well-dressed people chatted quietly. Luke felt their eyes on him as he approached the desk, wondering if they could tell he didn't belong, that he was just a mechanic playing dress-up. Mr. Bennett! The receptionist, a different one from Friday, smiled warmly. Ms. Brooks is expecting you. I'm Patricia. I'll be one of your administrative contacts. Here's your badge, your laptop, and your company phone. Ms. Brooks asked that you come straight to conference room A on the 20th floor. Luke juggled the items, the laptop alone worth more than he'd made in a month at Mitchell's. The badge had his photo from the application, but underneath it read Director Manufacturing Innovation in bold letters. It felt like fiction. The 20th floor hummed with purposeful energy. People moved through the hallways with the kind of confidence that came from knowing they mattered, that their work meant something. Luke found Conference Room A, a glass-walled space with a view that stretched to the horizon. Amanda was already there, along with 5 other people who looked up as he entered. Luke, perfect timing. Amanda stood and the others followed suit. Everyone, this is Luke Bennett, our new Director of Manufacturing Innovation. Luke, meet your team. The introductions blurred together. Jennifer from Quality Control, Marcus from Engineering, David from Operations, Sarah from Finance, and Tom from Human Resources. They all smiled, shook his hand, but Luke caught the skepticism in some of their eyes. He was an unknown, an outsider, someone Amanda had apparently plucked from nowhere. Luke comes to us from the manufacturing floor, Amanda said, and Luke noticed she didn't mention Mitchell's specifically. He brings a perspective we desperately need, someone who understands the reality of production, not just the theory. His first assignment is to evaluate our Southside facility. We're hemorrhaging efficiency there, and traditional approaches have failed. The union situation makes it complicated, Tom said carefully, his eyes on Luke. They're resistant to any changes, especially from management. Which is why Luke is perfect for this, Amanda said. He's not traditional management. Luke, I want you to spend the first week at Southside, on the floor, talking to the workers, understanding their challenges. Don't go in with solutions. Go in with questions. Marcus leaned forward. With all due respect, Ms. Brooks, we've had consultants observe the floor before. The workers just see it as spy tactics. I'm not a consultant, Luke said, finding his voice. Up until Friday, I was one of them. 15 years on a factory floor dealing with equipment held together with hope and zip ties, fighting for every maintenance dollar, watching good ideas die because someone in an office thought they knew better. The room went quiet. Amanda's smile was small but satisfied. Exactly, she said. Luke, Marcus will give you the Southside files, but I don't want you prejudiced by our previous reports. Trust your instincts. See what we're missing. After the meeting, Amanda asked Luke to stay behind. Once alone, her professional mask slipped slightly. How are you doing? Really? Terrified, Luke admitted. Those people have MBAs, decades of corporate experience. I have a community college degree and grease under my fingernails that won't come out no matter how hard I scrub. Good. Stay terrified. The day you get comfortable is the day you become like them, blind to what actually matters. Amanda moved to the window, looking out at the city. My father started this company with his hands, Luke. He understood machinery because he'd built it, fixed it, cursed at it. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. We became about spreadsheets and profit margins and forgot about the people actually doing the work. Why do you care? Luke asked. You could run this company purely for profit. Most CEOs would. Amanda turned to him, and for a moment, he saw Emily Madison again, the vulnerable woman in the rain. Because I'm 36 years old, I have more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, and I go home every night to an empty penthouse where I eat takeout alone while reviewing reports. Success without purpose is just expensive failure. That's a lonely picture. It is what it is, but this company can be better. You can help make it better. She straightened, the CEO mask sliding back into place. Your office is on the 15th floor. Patricia will show you. Take today to get settled. Review the files. Tomorrow, you go to Southside. Luke's office was larger than his living room at the trailer, with windows overlooking the city and furniture that gleamed with polish. His name was already on the door, engraved on a bronze plaque. Inside, he found a framed photo on the desk, the one from his application, him and Grace at last year's school science fair where she'd won second place. Amanda's touch, he realized. He spent the morning drowning in files about Southside. Production down 18%. Morale surveys showing record lows. 3 different consultants recommending automation to reduce workforce. Every report felt like it was written by someone who'd never touched a wrench, never felt the satisfaction of fixing something broken, never understood that efficiency wasn't just about numbers. It was about people feeling valued enough to care. His company phone rang just after lunch. Grace's school. Mr. Bennett, this is Principal Morrison. There's been an incident with Grace. Luke's heart stopped. Is she okay? She's fine, physically, but she got into an altercation with another student. We need you to come in. Luke grabbed his keys, stopping at Patricia's desk. I need to go to my daughter's school. Emergency. Of course. Do you need anything? Just, if Ms. Brooks asks, I'll handle it. Go. The drive to Grace's school in the Explorer felt different than it would have in his old truck. He pulled into the visitor's lot, noticing how other parents' cars no longer made his vehicle look like a charity case. Inside, he found Grace sitting outside the principal's office, her new pink boots swinging, a defiant tilt to her chin that was pure Susan. What happened, Princess? Tommy Morrison said we were trailer trash playing dress-up, Grace said, her voice steady but her eyes bright with unshed tears. He said his dad saw you at the mall, buying stuff with money we don't have, that we're probably in debt now, that people like us don't get real jobs at places like Brooks. And I punched him in the nose. Grace, I know it was wrong. I know violence doesn't solve anything. But Dad, he was so mean. He said Mom probably died because we couldn't afford good doctors. And that's when I hit him. Luke pulled his daughter into his arms, feeling her shake with anger and hurt. Over her head, he saw Principal Morrison approaching with another set of parents, well-dressed, disapproving, their son holding a tissue to his nose. Mr. Bennett, the principal began, but the other father cut him off. So you're the one filling your daughter's head with delusions of grandeur. My son says she's been bragging about some big job you supposedly got, about new cars and new clothes, setting her up for disappointment when reality hits. Luke gently moved Grace behind him and stood, using every inch of his height. Your son seems very interested in my family's business. Someone needs to teach that girl her place. Luke pulled his daughter into his arms, feeling her shake with anger and hurt. Over her head, he saw Principal Morrison approaching with another set of parents, well-dressed, disapproving, their son holding a tissue to his nose. Mr. Bennett, the principal began, but the other father cut him off. So you're the one filling your daughter's head with delusions of grandeur. My son says she's been bragging about some big job you supposedly got, about new cars and new clothes, setting her up for disappointment when reality hits. Luke gently moved Grace behind him and stood, using every inch of his height. Your son seems very interested in my family's business. Someone needs to teach that girl her place. Her place, Luke said, his voice dangerously quiet, is wherever she decides it should be. And right now, it's at the top of her class academically, which I believe is several positions above your son. How dare you? Your son attacked my daughter with words about her dead mother. She responded with her fists. I don't condone violence, but I understand it. What's your excuse for raising a bully? Principal Morrison stepped between them. Gentlemen, please, Mr. Morrison, Mr. Bennett, both children were wrong. Grace will serve 2 days of in-school suspension for fighting. Tommy will serve the same for bullying and inappropriate comments. This is outrageous, Mr. Morrison sputtered. My son was assaulted. Your son was held accountable, the principal said firmly. Something that perhaps should happen more often. After the Morrisons stormed out, Principal Morrison turned to Luke. Grace is a wonderful student, Mr. Bennett. This isn't like her. She's been under a lot of pressure. Things are changing for us, big changes, and not everyone is happy about it. I heard about your new position. Congratulations. It's well-deserved, and anyone who says otherwise is speaking from jealousy, not truth. On the drive back to school after signing the suspension paperwork, Grace was quiet. Finally, she said, I'm sorry, Dad. I know you taught me better. You stood up for our family, for your mom. I can't be too angry about that. Are you going to get in trouble at your new job? Let me worry about that. You just focus on being you, Princess. The Tommy Morrisons of the world will always exist. We can't punch them all in the nose, no matter how much they deserve it. Grace giggled despite herself. He did look pretty surprised. I bet he did. When Luke returned to Brooks Engineering, he found Amanda waiting in his office, sitting in one of the visitors' chairs, reviewing something on her phone. Patricia told me you had a family emergency. Everything okay? Luke explained the situation, expecting disappointment or concern about his professionalism. Instead, Amanda laughed, actually laughed, the sound transforming her face. She punched him? Good for her. I'm supposed to be discouraging violence. You're supposed to be raising a strong young woman who knows her worth. Sounds like you're doing exactly that. Amanda stood, smoothing her skirt, though maybe teach her about plausible deniability. Lawyers are expensive. Speaking from experience, I once threw a stapler at a board member who suggested I was only CEO because I was my father's daughter. I was 28, newly appointed, and terrified they were right. She moved toward the door, then paused. Bring Grace by this week. I'd like to meet the girl who defends her family with such ferocity. That evening, as Luke helped Grace with her homework, she'd have plenty of time to complete it during suspension. His phone rang. Unknown number. Bennett, this is Jim Mitchell, Luke's former boss. He tensed. Mr. Mitchell, I heard about your exit on Friday. Also heard Amanda Brooks snatched you up. Smart woman. Smarter than me, apparently. Sir? I'm calling to apologize, Bennett. You were right about everything. The maintenance, the improvements, the patents we basically stole from you. Thompson wants to fire you retroactively to avoid paying your last check, but that's not happening. In fact, there's a bonus coming. Not much, but it's something. Luke was speechless. Jim Mitchell had never apologized to anyone in the 20 years Luke had known of him. Also, Mitchell continued, if things don't work out at Brooks, you'll always have a place here. A better place. The place you should have had years ago. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. Take care of yourself, Bennett, and that daughter of yours. She's got a hell of a right hook from what I heard. How did you... Small town, big mouths. Tommy Morrison's father is my golf buddy. He's furious, but privately, I think the kid had it coming. After Mitchell hung up, Luke sat staring at his phone. The world was shifting, reorganizing itself around this new reality where he had value, where people apologized to him, where his daughter could punch a bully and have the CEO of a major corporation approve. Tuesday morning came early. Luke arrived at the Southside facility at 6 a.m., wanting to catch the shift change. He'd deliberately worn khakis and a polo instead of a suit, steel-toed boots instead of dress shoes. The security guard looked suspicious but let him through after checking his badge 3 times. The facility was enormous, 3 times the size of Mitchell's, with production lines that should have been humming with efficiency, but instead stuttered and stopped with alarming frequency. Luke positioned himself near the break room, watching the night shift trudge out while the day shift dragged themselves in. The body language alone told him more than any report could. You the new suit? A voice behind him asked. Luke turned to find a man about his age, weathered face, calloused hands, the universal look of a lifer. I'm Luke Bennett. And you? Carl Rodriguez, line supervisor. Though what I supervise changes depending on what's broken that day. Show me, Luke said simply. Carl looked surprised. Show you what? Everything. What's broken, what's held together with prayer, what keeps you up at night. For the next 6 hours, Carl led Luke through the reality of Southside. Ancient equipment that should have been replaced years ago. Safety shortcuts that made Luke's skin crawl. Workers doing the jobs of 3 people because hiring was frozen. And underneath it all, a rage that simmered just below the surface. You want to know why efficiency is down? Carl said, standing next to a conveyor held together with duct tape and wire. Because we stopped caring. Brooks keeps sending consultants who tell us we're doing it wrong, that we need to work smarter, not harder. But we're already working smart. We're just working with garbage. What would fix it? Luke asked. Carl laughed bitterly. You got $50 million? Because that's what it would take to actually fix this place. But if you had to start somewhere, one thing, what would it be? Carl studied him for a long moment. You're not like the other suits. 3 days ago, I was changing tires for 35 grand a year. No shit. No shit. Carl's entire demeanor changed. Okay, one thing, the main bearing on line 1. It's going to catastrophically fail within the week. When it does, it'll take out half the line, maybe hurt someone. We've been reporting it for 3 months. Nothing. Show me the reports. Carl pulled out a battered folder, pages of maintenance requests, all denied or deferred. Luke photographed each one with his company phone. I'll be back, Luke said. Sure you will. Luke drove straight back to headquarters, taking the stairs to the 20th floor 2 at a time. He found Amanda in her office, in a meeting with 3 board members. Patricia tried to stop him, but he knocked anyway. Luke? Amanda looked up, surprised. We're in the middle of... Southside Line 1 is going to fail catastrophically within the week. When it does, you're looking at minimum $2 million in damages and possible lawsuits if someone gets hurt. I need $40,000 and 2 days to prevent it. The board members looked scandalized. One, an older man with silver hair, stood up. This is highly inappropriate. You can't just barge in. Richard, sit down, Amanda said quietly. Luke, you're certain. Luke spread Carl's reports on her desk. 3 months of warnings, all ignored. This isn't about efficiency anymore. It's about safety. Amanda studied the reports, her face hardening. Richard, you oversee Southside operations. Care to explain why these were ignored? Budget constraints? We had a net profit of 80 million last year, Amanda said coldly. We can afford 40,000 for critical maintenance. Luke, you have approval. What else? I need hiring authority. They're running skeleton crews. It's not sustainable. Done. Anything else? Trust. They don't trust management, and they shouldn't. We've given them no reason to. Amanda looked at the board members. Gentlemen, we'll continue this later. Luke, walk with me. She led him out of the office, down the hallway, into an elevator. She hit the button for the parking garage. Where are we going? South side. If we're fixing this, we're doing it right. She pulled out her phone, rapid-fire texting. I'm calling an all hands at the facility. Every executive, every manager, they're going to hear directly from the floor why we're failing. They won't like that. Good. Comfort breeds complacency. The elevator opened and Amanda strode toward her car, a silver Tesla that probably cost more than most people's houses. Follow me. This is going to be interesting. The meeting at Southside was like nothing Luke had ever seen. Amanda had the entire workforce assembled in the main floor, executives and laborers side by side. She stood on a makeshift platform, designer heels and all, and proceeded to publicly eviscerate her management team for their failures. Mr. Rodriguez, she called out, and Carl nearly dropped his coffee. Please tell everyone about the bearing on line 1. Carl looked terrified, but Luke nodded encouragingly. Slowly, Carl explained the situation, the ignored reports, the impending failure. As he spoke, his confidence grew, and soon other workers were chiming in with their own examples of neglect and mismanagement. This ends now, Amanda said when the litany of complaints finally ended. Mr. Bennett is now in charge of all Southside operations. Anyone who has a problem with that can clean out their desk. You can't just... Richard started. I can and I am. Richard, you're being reassigned to community outreach. Maybe some time away from operations will remind you why we exist. Amanda turned to the workers. Changes start tomorrow. New equipment, new hires, new respect for the people actually doing the work. Luke, what else do they need? Luke looked at the sea of skeptical faces, men and women who'd been burned too many times to trust easily. A reason to believe this isn't just another corporate publicity stunt. Fair. Amanda pulled off her designer jacket, revealing a simple blouse underneath. Mr. Rodriguez, show me this bearing. I want to understand exactly what we're dealing with. The image of Amanda Brooks, CEO, crawling under industrial equipment in her designer clothes while Carl explained bearing mechanics would become legendary at Southside. Workers pulled out phones, recording their elegantly dressed leader getting covered in grease and dust, asking intelligent questions, genuinely trying to understand. This is criminal negligence, she said, emerging with oil streaked across her face. Luke, I want a full audit of every piece of equipment. Whatever needs replacing gets replaced. Whatever needs maintenance gets maintained. Richard, before you leave for your new position, you'll personally sign off on every expenditure. This will cost millions, Richard protested. It'll cost more when someone dies and their family sues us into oblivion, not to mention it's the right thing to do. She turned to address the workers again. I owe you all an apology. We failed you. I failed you. But that changes now. Luke Bennett is one of you. He's been where you are. Trust him, and by extension, trust me to let him do what needs doing. As the crowd dispersed, Carl approached Luke. Is she for real? I think so. And you're really in charge now? Apparently, Carl held out his hand. Then welcome to hell, boss. Let's see if we can turn it into something better. That evening, Luke picked up Grace from her grandmother Susan's parents, who'd been watching her during his long day. They lived in the nice part of town, in a house that had always made Luke feel inadequate. Susan's mother, Margaret, met him at the door. Luke, we heard about the new job. Congratulations. Thank you, Margaret. And Grace told us about the incident at school. That Morrison boy has always been a bully. Susan would have been proud of her for standing up for herself. The unexpected support made Luke's throat tight. Susan's parents had never quite approved of him, the mechanic who'd stolen their college-bound daughter. But here was Margaret, offering understanding. Grace appeared, backpack in hand, chattering excitedly about her day with her grandparents. As they walked to the Explorer, Margaret called out, Luke, Susan would be proud of you too, for all of it. On the drive home, Grace was full of questions about Southside, about Amanda, about the changes happening so fast they barely seemed real. Is Ms. Brooks pretty? Grace asked suddenly. What? Why does that matter? Just wondering. You said she's lonely. Maybe she needs a friend. Grace, I'm just saying you're lonely too sometimes. I see it. I have you. That's all I need. That's sweet, Dad, but also not true. Mom wouldn't want you to be alone forever. Can we not have this conversation when you're 11? I'll be 12 in 3 months, practically a teenager. Luke groaned, but he was smiling. The truth was, Amanda had been occupying his thoughts more than was strictly professional. The way she'd looked crawling under that equipment, passionate about fixing things, about doing right by the workers. It was attractive in a way that had nothing to do with her obvious physical beauty. His phone rang as they pulled into the trailer park. Amanda. Luke? How did the rest of the day go after I left? Good. Carl has the crew believing change might actually happen. The bearing will be replaced Thursday. Excellent. Listen, I have a favor to ask. There's a dinner tomorrow night. Potential investors. I need someone who can speak to our manufacturing improvements, but in a way that actually makes sense. Will you come? I don't know anything about investor dinners. You know about fixing things that are broken. That's all this is. Plus, it would be good for them to see that Brooks is evolving, bringing in new perspectives. What's the dress code? Black tie, but don't panic. I'll have something sent to your office. Amanda, please, Luke. I need someone there who isn't just another suit. Someone real. The vulnerability in her voice decided it. Okay. But if I use the wrong fork, that's on you. There are usually 4 forks. Start from the outside and work your way in. 4? What could possibly require 4 forks? Amanda's laugh was warm through the phone. Welcome to my world, Luke. Ridiculous etiquette and tiny portions that cost more than most people's rent. Sounds terrible. It is. That's why I need you there, to remind me why we do this, why it matters. After they hung up, Luke found Grace smiling at him knowingly. What? She likes you. She's my boss. So? You like her too. I can tell. Grace, it's complicated. Adults always say that when it's actually simple. You're nice. She's nice. You're both sad sometimes. Maybe you could be less sad together. The wisdom of children, Luke thought. If only it were that simple. But as he got Grace ready for bed, he found himself thinking about Amanda's laugh, about the way she'd looked with grease on her face, about how she'd stood up for the workers at Southside. Maybe Grace was right. Maybe it was simpler than he thought. Wednesday brought new challenges at Southside. The bearing replacement went smoothly, but Luke discovered 3 other critical failures waiting to happen. Each fix required money, authorization, battles with accounting. But Amanda backed him every time, sometimes showing up in person to emphasize her support. You're costing me a fortune, Bennett, she said, watching a new safety system being installed. You hired me to fix things. Things cost money to fix. Fair point. How's morale? Improving. They're starting to believe you mean it. Good. Don't forget about tonight. Tuxedo should be in your office. Luke had been trying not to think about it. A black-tie dinner was as foreign to him as space travel. But he'd committed, and Luke Bennett kept his commitments. The tuxedo fit perfectly, of course. Amanda had probably had Patricia pull his measurements from somewhere. Luke stood in his office bathroom, fumbling with the bow tie, when Marcus from engineering knocked. Need help? Desperately. Marcus entered, expertly tying the bow tie with practiced ease. Investment dinners or theater, he said. Everyone playing their parts. Just be yourself. That's why Amanda wants you there. Any other advice? Don't let Richard corner you. He's furious about the reassignment. And watch out for Harrison Wells. He's the lead investor, and he thinks anyone without an Ivy League degree is basically furniture. Fantastic. You'll be fine. Amanda doesn't invite people to these things lightly. She sees something in you. The dinner was at the Meridian, the city's most exclusive restaurant. Luke used the valet, trying not to calculate how much that alone cost. Inside, he found Amanda immediately. She wore a black dress that made every other woman in the room look overdressed, her hair swept up to reveal diamond earrings that caught the light like captured stars. Luke, perfect timing. She glided over and he caught her perfume, something subtle and expensive. You clean up well. I feel like a penguin. You look like a director at a major corporation, which is what you are. Come, Let me introduce you to people you'll hate. The next hour was a blur of handshakes and names he immediately forgot. Harrison Wells was exactly as Marcus had described, cold, dismissive, barely acknowledging Luke's existence until Amanda pointedly mentioned his innovations at Southside. Innovations? Wells sniffed. You mean spending money on basic maintenance? I mean preventing a catastrophic failure that would have cost millions and possibly lives, Luke said evenly. Sometimes the most innovative thing you can do is actually give a damn about your workers. The table went silent. Amanda's eyes sparkled with something that looked like delight. Interesting perspective, Wells said coldly. Very blue collar. That's the point, Amanda interjected. We've been white collar so long we forgot what actually makes things work. Luke's changing that. The dinner progressed, tiny courses that Luke couldn't identify but ate anyway. He used the right forks, thanks to Amanda's coaching, and found himself in a heated discussion with another investor about sustainable manufacturing practices. The initial cost is prohibitive, the investor argued. The cost of not changing is worse, Luke countered. Every worker who gets injured because we cheaped out on safety, every machine that fails because we deferred maintenance, every good employee who quits because they're not valued, that's the real cost. It doesn't show up on quarterly reports, but it's killing companies like ours. You speak passionately for someone who's been in management for 3 days. I speak passionately because I spent 15 years watching good companies fail their workers and then wonder why productivity tanked. Respect isn't a budget line item, but it pays dividends. After dinner, as investors mingled over drinks that cost more than Luke's old daily wage, Amanda appeared at his elbow. Walk with me. They stepped onto a balcony overlooking the city, the light stretching out like a circuit board. Amanda leaned against the railing, the weight of her position visible in the line of her shoulders. You did well tonight. Wells is actually considering increasing his investment. He hates me. He hates what you represent, change, accountability, the end of the old boys club, but he loves money more than he hates change, and you made a compelling case for profitability through ethics. Is that what I did? Amanda turned to face him, and in the moonlight, she looked younger, softer, more like Emily Madison than Amanda Brooks. You reminded them why we exist, not for stock prices or quarterly earnings, but to build things, to employ people, to matter. That's very idealistic for a CEO. I'm a romantic, she said with a self-deprecating laugh. I still believe business can be about more than greed. Your father would be proud. Amanda's eyes glistened. I hope so. Some days I feel like I'm failing him, like I've let the company become exactly what he never wanted. Without thinking, Luke reached out and touched her arm. You're not failing. You're fighting. That's what matters. She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Something shifted in the air between them, a recognition of possibility, of connection beyond professional boundaries. Luke, she said softly. I know, he said, pulling his hand back. You're my boss. This is inappropriate. Highly inappropriate, she agreed, but she didn't step away. HR would have a field day. Definitely. They stood there, not touching but somehow closer than before, the city lights bearing witness to something unspoken but understood. I should go, Luke said finally. Grace is with the neighbors and, of course, thank you for tonight, for everything. As Luke drove home in his Explorer, his mind churned with possibilities and complications. Amanda Brooks was brilliant, beautiful, powerful, everything he wasn't, but she was also lonely, driven by purpose rather than profit, and she looked at him like he mattered, like he was more than just a mechanic who'd gotten lucky. Grace was still awake when Luke got home, curled up on the couch with a book, waiting. She looked up as he entered, taking in the tuxedo with wide eyes. You look like James Bond, she said, setting her book aside. How was the fancy dinner? Tiny food, big egos, and 4 forks, Luke said, loosening the bow tie that had been strangling him all evening. How was Mrs. Patterson? Fine. She made meatloaf. It was very solid. Grace patted the couch beside her. Tell me about Ms. Brooks. Luke sat down, the expensive fabric of the tuxedo strange against their worn couch. What about her? Did she look pretty? Grace, Dad, I'm not blind. Something happened. You look different. Luke studied his daughter, this 11-year-old with an old soul, wondering when she'd become so perceptive. It's complicated, Princess. Because she's your boss or because you're scared? Both, Luke admitted, and because of Mom. Grace shifted closer, taking his hand. Mom's been gone 2 years, Dad. She wouldn't want you to be alone. She told me that near the end. She said you were too good at loving to waste it. Luke's throat tightened. She said that? She said lots of things. She said you'd blame yourself for not being able to save her, but that some things can't be fixed, only accepted. She said you'd throw yourself into work and taking care of me, but that eventually you'd need to remember you're a person too, not just a dad. I miss her, Luke said quietly. Me too, every day. But missing her doesn't mean we stop living. That would make her sad. Luke pulled Grace close, marveling at the wisdom Susan had left behind in their daughter. When did you get so smart? Tuesday, remember? Grace said with a small smile. But seriously, Dad, Ms. Brooks seems nice, and she must be smart if she hired you. It wouldn't be appropriate. There are rules about these things. Adults have too many rules, Grace declared. But okay, just don't close doors before you see what's behind them. The next morning brought chaos at Southside. Luke arrived to find a crowd of workers gathered around Line 2, where a pipe had burst during the night shift, flooding half the floor. Carl was there, soaked and exhausted, trying to coordinate the cleanup. Insurance is going to have a field day, Carl said as Luke approached. This is going to cost whatever it costs, Luke interrupted. Are people safe? Yeah, no injuries, just a mess. Then everything else is just money and time. Luke pulled out his phone, calling Amanda's direct line. She answered on the second ring. Luke? It's 6:30 in the morning. Southside flooded, burst pipe on line 2. No injuries, but we're looking at significant damage. I'm on my way. You don't need to Yes, I do. These people need to see leadership actually caring. Give me 20 minutes. She arrived in 15, wearing jeans and a Brooks Engineering sweatshirt Luke had never imagined she owned. Her hair was in a ponytail, her face free of makeup, and somehow she looked more beautiful than she had in the designer dress. Show me, she said simply. For the next 3 hours, Amanda Brooks worked alongside the cleanup crew, mopping floors, moving damaged equipment, her expensive manicure ruined within minutes. Workers kept stealing glances, unable to reconcile this woman with the CEO they'd heard about but never seen. Ma'am, one young worker said hesitantly, you don't have to do this. We've got it. What's your name? Amanda asked. Jerome. Jerome Washington. Well, Jerome, this is my company, my responsibility. When we ask you to work in these conditions, the least I can do is work alongside you when things go wrong. By noon, the worst of the flooding was handled. Amanda stood in the middle of the factory floor, soaked and dirty, addressing the assembled workers. This shouldn't have happened, she said. That pipe was on a replacement list 2 years ago. It was deferred to save money. Well, now it's cost us more than replacing it would have. Luke, I want every piece of deferred maintenance addressed. Everything. That's millions of dollars, Richard said. He'd arrived an hour ago in his suit, carefully avoiding the wet areas. Then it's millions of dollars, better than billions in lawsuits when someone dies. Amanda turned to the workers. I promise you, this changes now. Luke has full authority to fix what needs fixing. Anyone who stands in his way answers to me. As the crowd dispersed, Amanda caught Luke's arm. Walk with me? They went outside, where the morning had turned into a blazing afternoon. Amanda leaned against the building, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. This is my fault, she said. I knew things were bad, but I didn't push hard enough for changes. I let Richard and the board prioritize profits over people. You're fixing it now. After how many years of neglect? God, Luke, what else haven't I seen? At what other facilities are disasters waiting to happen? Want me to find out? Amanda looked at him, something vulnerable in her green eyes. Would you? I know it's beyond your current scope, but I'll visit every facility, do a full assessment, but I'll need authority to make immediate changes if I find critical issues. Done. She pushed off from the building, then swayed slightly. Luke steadied her with a hand on her elbow. When's the last time you ate? Yesterday, maybe? It's been a long night. Come on, there's a diner 2 blocks away. You need food. I can't go to a diner looking like this. Luke looked at her. Soaked sweatshirt, dirty jeans, her usual polish completely gone. You look like a person who just spent 3 hours helping her employees. That's nothing to be ashamed of. The diner was a throwback to the 50s, all red vinyl and chrome. The lunch crowd was mostly factory workers, who did double takes when they recognized Amanda. She slid into a booth across from Luke, looking at the plastic menu like it was written in a foreign language. "What's good here?" she asked. "Everything. Real food, real portions. The opposite of last night." They ordered burgers and fries, Amanda raising an eyebrow when Luke asked for extra pickles on hers without asking. "How did you know?" "You picked them out of your salad last night, but ate them separately. Figured you liked them, but not mixed with lettuce. You're observant. Occupational hazard. Spend enough time fixing things, you learn to notice details." Their food arrived, and Amanda bit into her burger with an expression of pure bliss. "Oh my God, this is amazing. When's the last time you had a real burger?" "Years? I can't even remember. There's always some business dinner or corporate event. Tiny portions of things I can't pronounce. That's no way to live. It's the way CEOs live." She paused, adding, "Lonely CEOs with too much money and not enough real connections." "You have connections. The way those workers looked at you today, that's respect for the position, not connection to the person. There's a difference." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the diner bustling around them. Finally, Amanda said, "Tell me about Susan." Luke wasn't expecting that. "What about her? What was she like? You loved her very much, that's obvious. But who was she?" Luke set down his burger, considering. "She was light. That's the best way to describe her. She made everything brighter just by being there. Smart, funny, kind to a fault. She could find beauty in anything. A sunset, a dandelion growing through concrete, the way Grace laughed." "How did you meet?" "High school. I was nobody, just another kid from the wrong side of town. She was headed for college, probably med school, but she saw something in me no one else did. We had Grace young, too young really, but Susan never regretted it. Said Grace was our miracle, even if the timing was off." "She sounds wonderful." "She was. The cancer took 2 years to kill her, but it never took her spirit. Even at the end, she was thinking about others. Made me promise to keep living, really living, not just existing." Luke smiled sadly. "I haven't done a great job with that promise until recently." Amanda reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "I think you're doing better than you realize." The touch was electric, sending warmth up Luke's arm. They stared at each other for a moment, the busy diner fading away. Then Amanda's phone rang, shattering the moment. "I have to take this," she said apologetically, pulling her hand back. "Brooks? Yes, I'm aware of the flooding. It's handled." "No, Richard. I don't care about the quarterly impact." Luke watched her shift back into CEO mode, confident and commanding despite her disheveled appearance. When she hung up, she sighed. "Emergency board meeting about the Southside expenses. They want to discuss my reckless spending." "Your board sounds delightful." "They're dinosaurs who think workers are expendable resources, not people. But they're also the ones with the money and influence to keep Brooks running." She pulled out her wallet, but Luke waved her off. "I've got it. CEOs shouldn't have to pay for their own burgers." "Luke, let me do this, please." She smiled, that soft Emily Madison smile that transformed her face. "Thank you. For lunch, for Southside, for everything." As they walked back to their cars, Amanda said, "I need to go change before the board meeting. Present the proper CEO image." "I like this image better," Luke said without thinking. Amanda stopped, turning to face him. "Do you?" "The real you, not the corporate facade." "Yeah, I do." "The real me is a mess, Luke. Trust fund baby who inherited a company she's not sure she deserves, trying to live up to a father who is larger than life, going home every night to an empty penthouse that echoes. The real you spent 3 hours mopping floors with your employees. The real you is fighting to change a culture of neglect. The real you stopped your board from denying critical maintenance. That's not a mess. That's magnificent." Amanda's eyes glistened. "You barely know me." "I know enough. They stood there in the parking lot, the afternoon sun beating down, two people from different worlds finding something unexpected in each other. Finally, Amanda stepped back. I should go. The board, fight them, Luke said. Don't let them undo what we started today. I will, I promise. She drove away in her Tesla, leaving Luke standing by his Explorer, wondering how a blown tire on Route 12 had led to this moment, to these feelings he wasn't prepared for. That evening, Luke was helping Grace with homework when his phone rang. Carl Rodriguez. Boss, you need to see the news. Luke turned on the television, finding a local news report. Amanda was on screen, standing in front of Southside, still in her jeans and sweatshirt from earlier. Brooks Engineering has neglected our workers for too long, she was saying to reporters. Today's flooding was preventable, caused by deferred maintenance that prioritized profits over people. That ends now. We're investing $50 million in infrastructure improvements across all facilities. It's not about the bottom line. It's about doing right by the people who make this company work. Miss Brooks, a reporter called out, your board has publicly opposed these expenditures. How do you respond? My board is welcome to find another CEO if they disagree with treating workers like human beings. But as long as I'm in charge, Brooks Engineering will be a company that values its people above its profits. The report cut to Richard being interviewed, his face purple with rage. This is fiscal irresponsibility. Shareholders will not stand for it. Grace looked at Luke. Is she going to get in trouble? Probably. But she's doing the right thing. Sometimes that's exactly what gets you in trouble, Princess. Luke's phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Board meeting was interesting. Still have my job. Barely. Thank you for giving me the courage to fight. He texted back. You always had the courage. You just needed to remember it. 3 dots appeared, showing she was typing, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, dinner tomorrow? My place? I want to cook for you and Grace. To thank you. Luke stared at the message. Dinner at her place crossed a line, moved them from professional to personal. But then again, they'd already crossed that line, hadn't they? In the diner, in the parking lot, in every moment where they'd seen each other as more than boss and employee. Say yes, Grace said, reading over his shoulder. You're supposed to be doing homework. Say yes, Dad. She's reaching out. Don't leave her hanging. Luke typed back. We'd love to. What time? 6? I'll send the address. The next day, Luke spent touring other Brooks facilities, finding similar patterns of neglect. Not as bad as Southside, but troubling enough. He documented everything, sending reports directly to Amanda. Her responses were swift and decisive. Approved, approved. Fix it immediately. By 5, he was back at the trailer, finding Grace already dressed in her best outfit, a dress Susan's parents had bought her last Christmas. Too much? She asked anxiously. You look perfect, Princess. Amanda's penthouse was in the most exclusive building in the city, all glass and steel reaching toward the sky. The doorman looked skeptical when Luke gave his name, but a quick call upstairs cleared their entry. The elevator required a special key for the penthouse level. This is like a movie, Grace whispered. The elevator opened directly into Amanda's apartment, and Luke's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Modern art adorned the walls, and everything was pristine, perfect, and somehow cold. You came! Amanda appeared from what must be the kitchen, wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her feet bare. Grace, I'm so happy to finally meet you properly. Your apartment is amazing, Grace said, openly staring. It's a place to sleep, Amanda said with a shrug. Come on, I'm attempting to cook. Fair warning, I'm much better at running companies than making dinner. The kitchen was a chef's dream, all professional-grade appliances that looked barely used. Amanda had ingredients scattered across the marble island, a cookbook propped open, flour somehow already in her hair. What are we making? Grace asked. I was attempting lasagna, but Amanda gestured at the chaos. I can help, Grace offered. Dad taught me. We make lasagna all the time. From a box, Luke clarified. Still counts, Grace said, rolling up her sleeves. Okay, first, your sauce is burning. What followed was 2 hours of controlled chaos. Grace took charge, directing Amanda and Luke with the confidence of someone who'd been cooking since she could reach the counter. Amanda was an eager student, asking questions, laughing when she dropped an entire egg into the mixture, shell and all. I'm hopeless, she said, fishing out eggshell pieces. You're learning, Grace corrected. Everyone's hopeless at first. Luke watched them together. His daughter and this woman who ran a multi-million-dollar company but couldn't crack an egg properly. There was something deeply right about it, something that made his chest tight with emotions he wasn't ready to name. Finally, the lasagna was in the oven, and they moved to the living room with glasses of wine for the adults and sparkling grape juice for Grace. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the city lights beginning to twinkle below. "Can I explore?" Grace asked. "Of course. There's a library down the hall that you might like." Grace scampered off, leaving Luke and Amanda alone on the massive sectional couch that probably cost more than his annual salary at Mitchell's. "She's amazing," Amanda said. "So confident, so bright. You've done an incredible job with her." "That's mostly Susan's influence. I just try not to mess it up." "Don't sell yourself short. She adores you. The way she talks about you, looks at you. You're her hero. Every kid needs to believe their parent is a hero. Eventually, she'll realize I'm just a guy doing his best. Maybe that's what heroes really are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights multiply as darkness fell. Finally, Amanda said, "The board gave me an ultimatum today. Reduce the infrastructure spending by 70% or face a vote of no confidence." Luke turned to look at her. "What are you going to do?" "Fight. Call their bluff. My father built this company, but more importantly, he built it on principles. If they want to abandon those principles for profit, they'll have to do it without me." "You could lose everything." "No," Amanda said softly. "I could lose my job, but I'd keep my integrity. That's not nothing." "It's everything," Luke agreed. Amanda shifted closer, not quite touching, but close enough that he could feel her warmth. "Luke, I need to tell you something." "Amanda, please, let me say this. That day on Route 12, I wasn't just testing you. I was genuinely stranded, genuinely desperate. But when you stopped, when you gave me your wife's raincoat, when you changed that tire in the rain, knowing it would cost you everything, I saw something I'd forgotten existed. Pure goodness. No agenda, no calculation, just a good man doing the right thing. Anyone would have, we've been through this. No, they wouldn't have. And even fewer would have been so gracious about it. You had every right to be angry, to be bitter, but you weren't. You just helped." She turned to face him fully. "Do you understand how rare that is? How rare you are?" Luke didn't know what to say, so he said nothing, just looked at her, this powerful, lonely woman who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten what it was like to have someone see her as just Amanda, not the CEO, not the Brooks fortune, just her. "I'm falling for you," she said quietly. "I know it's inappropriate. I know it complicates everything, but I needed you to know. Amanda, I know all the reasons it's a bad idea. The power dynamic, the professional implications, the fact that you're still grieving Susan. I know, but I also know that you're the first person in years who's made me want to be better, not just successful. You make me want to be the person my father hoped I'd become." Luke reached out, taking her hand. "You are that person. You proved it at Southside, at the board meeting, every time you choose people over profit. Only because you reminded me it was possible. Dad, Amanda, something's burning." They jumped apart as Grace came running in. The lasagna. They raced to the kitchen to find smoke pouring from the oven. Luke grabbed oven mitts, pulling out a lasagna that was charred on top, but might be salvageable underneath. "It's ruined," Amanda said miserably. "It's character," Grace said diplomatically. "We can cut off the burned parts." They ate the salvaged lasagna at Amanda's dining table that probably hadn't been used in months, laughing about the cremated top layer, Grace regaling Amanda with stories of other cooking disasters. It was the best meal Luke had had in years, not because of the food, but because of the company, the laughter, the feeling of something new beginning. After dinner, Grace curled up on the couch with a book from Amanda's library while Luke helped with dishes. They worked side by side at the sink, their hands occasionally brushing in the soapy water, each touch electric. "This is nice," Amanda said quietly. "Having people here, having you here. We should probably talk about what you said earlier. Should we? Or should we just see what happens?" Luke dried his hands, turning to face her. What about HR, the board? The appearance of impropriety? I'm already fighting the board. HR works for me. And as for impropriety, they can't fire me for having feelings. They can make my life difficult, but they're already doing that. I don't want to make things harder for you. You make things better, clearer. You remind me why I do this job. She stepped closer. I'm not asking for promises or declarations. I'm just asking for a chance to see what this could be. Luke wanted to say yes, wanted to pull her into his arms, wanted to explore this unexpected connection. But he thought of Susan, of Grace, of all the complications this would bring. Can I think about it? Of course. Take all the time you need. Just don't take too long. I've spent too many years alone, and now that I've found someone who sees me, really sees me, I don't want to waste any more time. The drive home was quiet, Grace pretending to sleep in the passenger seat while Luke's mind churned. As he carried her into the trailer, she wasn't fooling anyone, but he played along. She whispered, Mom would like her. You think? She's sad like we were sad. She needs us, Dad, and maybe we need her too. Luke tucked Grace into bed, then stood at his window looking at the city lights, knowing that somewhere in that glittering skyline, Amanda was probably standing at her own window, looking out at the same view from a different angle. His phone buzzed. A text from Amanda. Thank you for tonight, for everything. Whatever you decide, I'm grateful to know you. Luke typed back. I'm grateful too. He almost added more, almost said what his heart was telling him to say. But some decisions needed more than heart. They needed time, consideration, the wisdom to know when taking a chance was worth the risk. But as he lay in bed that night, Luke knew the decision was already made. Had been made the moment Amanda Brooks crawled under industrial equipment in her designer clothes to understand what her workers faced. Or maybe before that, when she'd stood in the rain, vulnerable and human, needing help. Or maybe even before that, when fate or chance or Susan's guiding hand had put him on Route 12 at exactly the right moment. The weekend arrived with unexpected warmth for late fall. Luke woke Saturday to find Grace already up, making breakfast, scrambled eggs that were only slightly rubbery and toast that was barely burned. What's the occasion? He asked. We need to talk about Amanda. Grace, Dad, you like her. She likes you. You're both being weird about it because adults make everything complicated. She set a plate in front of him with determination. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to invite her to do something normal. Not fancy, just normal. Show her what real life is like. And what would you suggest? The fair. The fall fair is this weekend. Take her to the fair. Amanda Brooks at a county fair? Why not? She needs to have some fun. Real fun. Not investor dinner fun. Luke considered this. The image of Amanda in her designer clothes at a county fair was absurd. But then again, he'd thought the same about her mopping floors at Southside. Fine, I'll ask. But if she says no, she won't say no. Luke pulled out his phone, typing before he could lose his nerve. Grace insists I invite you to the county fair today. Completely understand if that's not your thing. The response was immediate. What does one wear to a county fair? Grace, reading over his shoulder, grabbed the phone and typed, Jeans and comfortable shoes. Pick you up at noon? It's a date, came the reply. Grace handed the phone back with a satisfied smile. See? Easy. They picked Amanda up at noon, finding her waiting in the lobby of her building, wearing jeans, a cotton shirt, and sneakers that looked brand new. She'd pulled her hair into a ponytail and looked younger, lighter, more like Emily than Amanda. I haven't been to a fair since I was a kid, she admitted as she climbed into the Explorer. Then you're in for a treat, Grace said. There's funnel cake and corn dogs and really sketchy rides that might kill you. Sounds delightful, Amanda said, and she seemed to mean it. The fair was everything a county fair should be. Crowded, loud, slightly chaotic, and wonderful. Grace immediately dragged them to the games, where Luke won her a stuffed bear that was roughly the size of a small child. Amanda tried the ring toss, failing spectacularly but laughing harder than Luke had ever heard her laugh. I run a multi-million-dollar company, she said, missing another ring. You'd think I could get one ring on a bottle. Different skill set, Luke said, stepping behind her, guiding her arm. It's all in the wrist. The next ring landed perfectly. "We make a good team," Amanda said, and something in her voice made it clear she wasn't just talking about the ring toss. They ate foods that would horrify Amanda's probably personal trainer: corn dogs, cotton candy, deep-fried Oreos that made Grace's eyes roll back in bliss. "This is terrible for me," Amanda said, biting into a funnel cake. "The best things usually are," Luke replied. They rode the Ferris wheel as the sun set, Grace between them, the three of them looking out over the fair lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. "Thank you for this," Amanda said quietly. "I'd forgotten what it was like to just be. Everyone needs to just be sometimes. Even CEOs. Especially CEOs." As they walked back through the fair, Grace running ahead to look at the animals, Amanda slipped her hand into Luke's. It was tentative, a question more than a statement. Luke squeezed gently, answering. "I've been thinking," he said. "Dangerous habit." "About us. About what you said the other night." Amanda stopped walking, turning to face him. The fair lights created a halo around her hair, and Luke thought she'd never looked more beautiful than she did right now, powdered sugar on her shirt, holding a ridiculous stuffed penguin Grace had won for her. "And Susan would have liked you," Luke said. "She would have said you need someone to remind you that life exists outside of boardrooms, and that I need someone to remind me that it's okay to want more than just survival." Is that your way of saying yes to giving us a chance? That's my way of saying I'm already falling for you too. Have been since you stood in the rain looking lost and I realized you were just as human as the rest of us. Amanda's smile could have powered the entire fair. "So what do we do now?" "Now we figure it out as we go, like normal people do." "I haven't been normal people in a very long time." "Then I'll teach you. First lesson: normal people kiss at county fairs." Luke leaned in, and Amanda met him halfway, their first kiss tasting like funnel cake and possibility. It was sweet and tentative and perfect, everything a first kiss should be. When they pulled apart, Luke saw Grace watching from near the animal pens, giving them an exaggerated thumbs up. "Your daughter is not subtle," Amanda laughed. "She gets that from her mother." They spent the rest of the evening at the fair, riding rides that made Amanda scream with delight, watching Grace show Amanda how to pet the goats without getting bitten, winning more stuffed animals than they could carry. It was normal and perfect, and exactly what all three of them needed. As they drove home, Grace asleep in the back seat surrounded by stuffed animals, Amanda said, "The board meets Monday. They're going to try to force me out." "You think they have the votes?" "Maybe. Probably. Richard's been working behind the scenes, promising them a return to the old ways if they make him CEO. What will you do if they succeed?" "I don't know. I have money, I don't need to work. But Brooks Engineering is my father's legacy. Walking away feels like betraying him." "Your father would want you to be happy. That's a parent's real legacy, their children's happiness." Amanda was quiet for a moment. "Would you stay if Richard takes over?" "Not a chance. I've worked for men like Richard my whole life. Never again." "Then we'd both be unemployed. We'd figure it out. Normal people do that too." Sunday brought unexpected visitors. Luke was fixing a leaky faucet when a black town car pulled up to the trailer. An elderly man emerged, dignified despite needing a cane, his suit worth more than the trailer itself. "Mr. Bennett, I'm Harrison Wells." The lead investor who'd dismissed Luke at the dinner. Luke set down his wrench, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Mr. Wells? May I come in?" Luke wanted to say no, but curiosity won. He led Wells into the trailer, watching the man take in the cramped space, the water-stained ceiling, the second-hand everything. "This is how you live?" Wells asked, not unkindly. "This is home." Wells settled carefully onto the patched couch. "I've been in business for 50 years, Mr. Bennett. I've seen hundreds of men like you, working class, brilliant, held back by circumstances. Most of them stay bitter. You're different." "Am I?" "You had Amanda Brooks' ear, her obvious favor. You could have used that for personal gain. Instead, you fought for workers you'd known for a week. Why?" "Because it was right." "That simple?" "The best things usually are." Wells studied him for a long moment. "I knew Amanda's father. Started with nothing, built an empire. He never forgot where he came from. Amanda has, or had, until you reminded her. She never forgot. She just got lost in the noise. Perhaps. Wells stood, leaning heavily on his cane. The board meets tomorrow. Richard has been convincing in his arguments for Amanda's removal, but I haven't decided my vote yet. Why are you telling me this? Because I wanted to see what kind of man had inspired Amanda Brooks to risk everything for principle. Now I know. He moved toward the door, then paused. Tell me, Mr. Bennett, what would you do if you ran Brooks Engineering? I'd remember that every spreadsheet represents people, families, dreams. I'd invest in those people, knowing that they'd invest back in the company. I'd choose long-term stability over short-term profit, and I'd never forget that dignity matters more than the bottom line. Wells smiled, the first genuine expression Luke had seen from him. Amanda's father would have liked you. Good day, Mr. Bennett. After Wells left, Luke called Amanda. Harrison Wells just left my trailer. What? Why? I think he's trying to decide whether you're worth saving. And I think he wanted to see if I was real or just another corporate climbing opportunity. What did you tell him? The truth. Monday morning came like a storm. Luke arrived at Brooks Engineering to find security guards at every entrance, employees clustered in nervous groups, the air thick with tension. The board was meeting on the top floor deciding Amanda's fate, and by extension, the fate of everyone who'd believed in her vision. Luke went to Southside, trying to work, but everyone was distracted, constantly checking phones for news. Carl finally voiced what everyone was thinking. If she goes, we're screwed, aren't we? Maybe not screwed, Luke said, but it won't be the same. You could talk to them, the board, tell them what she's done here. They don't care about what she's done here. They care about quarterly reports. At noon, Luke's phone rang. Amanda. It's over, she said, and he could hear tears in her voice. They voted, 6-4. I'm out, effective immediately. Richard is interim CEO. Luke's heart sank. I'm so sorry. I have to go clean out my office. Security is actually escorting me. Can you believe that? 10 years, and they're treating me like a criminal. I'll meet you there. No, don't risk your job, Such. What job? You think I'm working for Richard? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Luke found Amanda in her office, carefully packing personal items into boxes while 2 security guards watched. Her eyes were red, but her head was high. You didn't have to come, she said. Yes, I did. He started helping her pack, ignoring the guards' disapproving looks. What will you do? I don't know. For the first time in my life, I have no plan. She picked up the photo of her father from her desk. I failed him. No, you honored him. You fought for what he believed in. The board failed him. As they carried the boxes to the elevator, employees lined the hallways. Luke expected them to avoid eye contact, the way people do when power shifts. Instead, they began applauding. First one, then another, until the entire floor was clapping. Some were crying. Thank you, Jennifer from Quality Control said. You reminded us why we do this, Marcus added. By the time they reached the lobby, hundreds of employees had gathered. The applause was thunderous. Richard appeared, his face red with anger. Get back to work, all of you, he shouted. This is a business, not a theater. No one moved. You're all risking your jobs. Then fire us, someone called out. Fire all of us. See how that works out for you. Security tried to escort Amanda out quickly, but she stopped at the door, turning to address the crowd. Thank you, she said simply. All of you. It's been an honor. Keep fighting for what's right, especially when it costs you. As they loaded boxes into Amanda's Tesla, Luke made a decision. Wait here, he said. He went back inside, took the elevator to his office, former office, and quickly packed his few personal items. Patricia watched sadly. You're leaving? Can't work for Richard. Won't work for Richard. He'll make your life hell if you quit now. No references, no unemployment. He's vindictive. Then I'll figure something else out. Luke returned to find Amanda still waiting, tears flowing freely now that the audience was gone. You quit? She asked, seeing his box. The second you were voted out. Just took me a minute to pack. Luke, you need this job. Grace needs you to have this job. Grace needs me to be someone she can respect. Can't do that working for a man who'd destroy everything you built. Amanda kissed him then, right there in the parking lot, in full view of the building's windows where half the company was probably watching. It was desperate and sad and defiant all at once. "So what do we do now?" she asked when they pulled apart. "Now we go pick up Grace from school and tell her we're both unemployed." "That should be fun. And then we figure out what's next, together." Amanda smiled through her tears. Together. I like the sound of that. As they drove away from Brooks Engineering, Luke's phone buzzed with texts. Carl. 30 of us just quit. Richard's having a meltdown. Jennifer. Make that 50. Marcus. Engineering department just walked out en masse. Looks like you started something, Luke said, showing Amanda the messages. We started something, she corrected. The question is, what do we do with it? Luke thought about the workers walking out, about Amanda's vision for ethical manufacturing, about Grace saying her mom would be proud. An idea began forming, crazy and ambitious and exactly right. What if we started over, he said. Our own company, built the right way from the beginning. Amanda turned to look at him, hope beginning to replace despair in her eyes. You mean it? Why not? You have the knowledge, I have the experience, and apparently we have 50 potential employees who believe in doing things right. It would be starting from scratch, no guarantee of success. But a guarantee of integrity, that's worth something. Amanda was quiet for a moment, then she began to laugh, not bitter or sad, but genuine and free. My father started Brooks Engineering in a garage with 3 employees and a dream. Maybe it's time for history to repeat itself. So that's a yes? That's a yes to everything, Luke, to the company, to us, to whatever comes next. As they drove toward Grace's school, the afternoon sun breaking through the clouds, Luke thought about Susan, about his father, about all the moments that had led to this one. A blown tire on Route 12 had started it all, but it was the choices after, choosing kindness, choosing courage, choosing love, that had brought them here. His phone rang. Harrison Wells. Mr. Bennett, I thought you should know. I voted against the removal. As did 3 others Amanda didn't expect. It wasn't enough, but it was close. Thank you for trying. I'm not done trying. Richard's already making disastrous decisions. The board will realize their mistakes soon enough. In the meantime, if you and Amanda are considering any ventures, I might know some investors who value integrity over immediate profit. We might be considering something. Good. My car will be at your trailer tomorrow at 9. We should talk. As Wells hung up, Luke realized the world was full of possibilities he'd never imagined. Sometimes losing everything was just the first step to finding what you were really meant to do. Grace took the news of their mutual unemployment with remarkable composure, sitting at the kitchen table with her hands folded like a miniature adult receiving a business report. So you're both jobless because you stood up for what's right? She summarized after Luke and Amanda finished explaining. That's about it, Princess, Luke confirmed. Good, Grace said firmly. Mom always said the right thing isn't usually the easy thing. Besides, Amanda, you have money, right? We won't starve? Amanda laughed, the sound still tinged with the day's emotional exhaustion. No, we won't starve. I have enough saved to keep us all comfortable for quite a while. Then what's the problem? You two can figure out what to do next without pressure. Most people don't get that chance. Grace stood up, moving to hug Amanda, who seemed startled by the gesture. Thank you for fighting for those workers. They needed someone to care. That evening, Amanda stayed for dinner, boxed macaroni and cheese with hot dogs cut up in it, which she proclaimed delicious despite Luke's embarrassment at serving such simple fare to someone accustomed to gourmet meals. This is comfort food, Amanda said, taking another bite. I haven't had comfort food in years. We have it all the time, Grace said. Dad makes the best grilled cheese sandwiches, too, with 3 kinds of cheese. 3 kinds. Amanda raised an eyebrow at Luke. American for meltability, cheddar for flavor, and a little Swiss for complexity, Luke explained, feeling ridiculous discussing his grilled cheese philosophy with a woman who'd eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants. You'll have to make them for me sometime, Amanda said, and the simple future tense of it, the assumption that there would be many more dinners together, made Luke's chest warm. After Grace went to bed, Luke and Amanda sat on the trailer's front steps, looking out at the modest neighborhood settling into evening quiet. The contrast with Amanda's penthouse view couldn't have been starker, but she seemed content, leaning against Luke's shoulder. Harrison Wells wants to meet tomorrow, Luke said. He mentioned potential investors. For what? We don't even have a business plan, just an idea and 50 unemployed workers who believe in us. Maybe that's enough to start. Amanda turned to look at him. You really think we can do this? Build something from nothing? Your father did it. My dad worked his whole life for other people's dreams. I want to work for our dream, for something we build together. Our dream, Amanda repeated softly. I like how that sounds. There's something else, Luke said. If we do this, I want us to do it as equals, not you as CEO and me as an employee, real partners. Luke, I have an MBA from Harvard, years of experience, and I have 15 years on factory floors, understanding what actually makes things work. You know business, I know manufacturing. Together, we might actually create something revolutionary. Amanda was quiet for a moment. Equal partners, 50-50. Equal partners, Luke agreed. She held out her hand to shake, formally, but when Luke took it, she pulled him in for a kiss instead. Partners in everything, she whispered against his lips. The next morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching the nervous energy in Luke's stomach as Harrison Wells' town car pulled up to the trailer at precisely 9 o'clock. Amanda had arrived earlier, bringing coffee and pastries from a bakery Luke couldn't afford to even walk past normally. You didn't have to, Luke started. Partners share breakfast, Amanda said simply. Besides, Grace needs proper fuel for school. Wells emerged from his car, again navigating the muddy ground with his cane, but this time accompanied by two other people, a middle-aged black woman in an elegant business suit and a younger Asian man in jeans and a startup t-shirt. Mr. Bennett, Ms. Brooks, Wells said formally. May I introduce Patricia Williams, who runs the Williams Foundation for Ethical Manufacturing, and David Chen, who sold his tech company for quite a substantial sum and now invests in what he calls conscious capitalism. Luke's small living room had never hosted such an unlikely gathering, millionaires and possibly billionaires sitting on his patched furniture, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs while the ceiling stain from last winter's leak seemed to grow more prominent by the minute. Mr. Wells tells us you have a vision, Patricia Williams said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being listened to. We'd like to hear it. Luke looked at Amanda, who nodded encouragingly. They hadn't prepared a pitch, hadn't even formally discussed what their company would be, but Luke found words coming anyway. We want to build a manufacturing company that proves treating workers well isn't just ethical, it's profitable, he began. Every decision the old Brooks Engineering made prioritized shareholders over workers. We want to flip that. Pay living wages, provide real benefits, invest in safety and training, and trust that happy, valued workers will produce better results. That's idealistic, David Chen said, but he was smiling. I love idealistic. Tell me more. Amanda took over, her business training evident as she outlined potential structures, profit-sharing models, sustainable practices that would cost more initially but save money long-term. Luke jumped in with practical examples from his time at Southside, showing how small investments in worker comfort and safety could yield massive productivity gains. The 50 workers who quit Brooks yesterday, Luke said, they're not just employees, they're believers. They walked away from steady paychecks because they believe in doing things right. That kind of loyalty,